Okay, Dad, tell us what you remember about your mom and dad and their life in Hungary.
I don't know anything at all about my mother's life in Hungary. She came over here as a young woman, but I do know a little bit of my father's life. My father left his parents' business as a young man because it was in this little village, and he decided to go up to Budapest to make his fortune.
What year? Do you know?
It has to be sometime in the late 1890s.
Okay.
In the last decade of that century, of the 19th century. He went up to Hungary. He got himself...
Went up to Budapest.
To Budapest. He got himself involved in a business where they were manufacturing screw manufacturing business, screws and threads, until he became a partner in the business, and apparently the business was very, very successful. At that time, he married, and he started raising a family. He had 2 daughters. What happened with the business, I'm not quite sure, but after a while, the business apparently took a turn downward, and so did his marriage. His marriage took a turn downward, and he decided to leave the country, and he decided he wanted to emigrate to the United States. He told me a funny story.
What year?
It happened to be prior, probably this had to be around in the first decade of the 20th century.
The year I remember you mentioning was 1908.
Well, yeah, something like that.
Okay, tell about the story.
Okay. The funny story about it was he told me that he left Budapest, and before he came to the United States, he wound up in Hamburg. And in Hamburg, apparently, he found himself in some kind of a gambling casino, and he blew all the money that he had, and he had to go back to Budapest to get more money, and his brothers gave him more money, and this time he came to the United States. And apparently, he landed probably in New York, probably prior to the outbreak of the war in Europe. You want me to continue?
Yeah, well, okay, then.
That's Hungary.
Okay, that's Hungary. He came here.
He came here, and he landed in New York probably in the second decade, just prior to the outbreak of the war in Europe.
I think I remember you telling me that the reason he chose New York had something to do with he felt that it was earthquake-free. Did you remember telling me that?
No, I have no
okay.
I have no knowledge.
All right.
Okay. So he landed in New York, and he decided, didn't stay very long, and he decided he wanted to see the country. And what he did is he wended his way to California, sunny California, and what he did, he went by freight cars. You know, he jumped freight trains. That's what he told me, as I remember correctly. And he wound up in California at the time when the motion picture industry was beginning to become involved in California. He stayed in California maybe a year, and then he started wending his way back, and he wound up, for some reason or other, in Dubuque, Iowa. That's where he wound up, in Dubuque, Iowa, and he went into a library in Dubuque, Iowa, and he read about a German chemist by the name of Wohler, W-O-H-L-E-R.
Actually, he was Austrian.
And he decided that was going to be his name now. Instead of Vago, he came as Vago, V-A-G-O. That was his name on his visa. Now, I don't know if he needed a visa or not. I don't think he needed
well,
that.
Did he legally change it?
Whether he legally changed it or not, but that's the name that appeared on his citizenship paper.
Okay.
Okay. And he decided, he was reading up in that book, and he decided that he found out how to make storage batteries. And what he did then, he left Dubuque, Iowa, I hope under good conditions, he never told me, and then he wound up now in Philadelphia, where apparently he met his second wife now.
Why did he go to Philadelphia? Do you have any idea?
I don't know why he wound up in Philadelphia. He never told me that. I think by this time he had been divorced. I think I imagine his first wife in Hungary, either she had died or she divorced him. He never told me. I don't know. So then he met my mother, your grandmother, and he got married. They got married at a double wedding. The two girls, my mother and her younger sister Esther, and my father and Martin Satmary, they got married in a double wedding ceremony in 1917. And at that time, apparently, he started manufacturing storage batteries in a shop on Broad Street in Philadelphia. And he called himself the big manufacturer of storage batteries at that time was Exide, and he imitated the name, and he called himself the Oxide Storage Battery Company. And that is what I remember as a little boy, being able to go into the shop where he was manufacturing those storage batteries. And at that time, radio was becoming very famous. People were buying radios, but in order to run the radios were run not with the AC that they run now, it was run by DC. And you needed a storage battery for the DCs, so his business prospered there for a while, and he made contact. He had contracts with several department stores in Philadelphia, and he was doing pretty good. We had a car. The car, he never drove the car, but he had a young black guy. At that time, we called them Negroes.
No, you call them Schwarzes.
Well, he drove us around, and the car was, at that time, the manufactured, it was called a Willys 6.
Right.
That was the name of the car, and I remember being taken down. We made trips to Atlantic City in that car with the chauffeur driving us, and that brings us up to the time when the people no longer needed storage batteries for the radio, and his business failed. And that's the time that he left Philadelphia. Now, you want to stop at the moment now?
Okay, we can.
Okay, now.
Hang on.